The pharmacist did not look up when he said the total, but the number echoed through her chest like a verdict. It was not loud, not cruel, not even impatient. It was simply factual, and somehow that made it worse. The small white bag on the counter felt heavier than anything she had ever carried, as if it held not only bottles and boxes, but the fragile thread between hope and heartbreak. Amina stood very still, afraid that if she moved too quickly, the tears gathering in her eyes would spill over and expose her. The pharmacy smelled faintly of antiseptic and baby powder. A toddler cried somewhere near the greeting cards. The soft hum of a refrigerator storing insulin vibrated behind the counter. Everything about the place felt ordinary, routine, unremarkable, except for the storm rising quietly inside her. She had counted the money 3 times before leaving home. She had unfolded the worn bills from the small tin box she kept hidden in the kitchen cupboard beneath the bag of rice that was almost empty. She had whispered a prayer over them, asking that they would be enough. But now, as the pharmacist repeated the amount with gentle patience, she knew they were not. The medicine was for her son. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even in the darkest moments, humanity can still surprise us. Amina swallowed and felt the dryness scrape her throat. Her son Hamza had been burning with fever for 2 nights. The clinic doctor had spoken in a careful tone, explaining that the infection was serious but treatable if she started the antibiotics immediately. Immediately was a word that did not understand poverty. Immediately did not know what it meant to wait for a neighbor to repay a small loan, or to skip meals so a child could eat. She had already sold the last gold bangle her mother had given her on her wedding day. She had stopped taking the bus to work and walked instead, her sandals thinning against the pavement. She cleaned offices in the evening and stitched clothes for neighbors at night. Every rupee had a purpose, every coin was assigned a future. But illness does not consult budgets. Behind her, a line had formed. She could feel the presence of others, shifting their weight, glancing at watches, clearing throats softly. No one was rude, no one needed to be. Shame does not require an audience to grow. It blooms perfectly well on its own. She placed the money she had on the counter. It covered a little more than half. Her hands trembled as she asked if there was any cheaper alternative, any smaller dosage, any delay possible. The pharmacist checked the screen again, shook his head with sympathy, and explained that this was already the generic option. There was nothing less expensive that would work as effectively. For a moment, the world narrowed into a single thought. She would have to walk back home without the medicine. She imagined Hamza's small body curled beneath the thin blanket, his lips dry, his breathing shallow. She had promised him she would bring something to make him better. He had looked at her with tired trust, as if mothers were magicians who could fix everything. Amina began to gather the money back into her purse, each note feeling like an admission of failure. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, her vision blurred. And then, something unexpected happened. A voice from behind her, calm and steady, said that the medicine should be added to his bill. At first, she did not realize the words were meant for her. She turned slightly and saw a man, perhaps in his late 40s, wearing a simple shirt and carrying a basket with a few household items. There was nothing extraordinary about him, no expensive watch, no air of authority, just a tired face and kind eyes. He stepped forward and told the pharmacist to include the total with his own purchase. He said it plainly, as though it were the most natural decision in the world. Amina's heart pounded so loudly she feared everyone could hear it. She tried to protest, to explain that she could not accept such help from a stranger, but the man gently insisted. He spoke not with pity, but with quiet certainty. He said that sometimes we carry each other, and someday someone else would carry him. The pharmacist processed the payment.
the receipt printed with a soft whirring sound. The small white bag was placed into Amina's trembling hands. She felt as though the air around her had changed. The weight in her chest loosened, replaced by something warm and overwhelming. Gratitude can be as powerful as grief. It can bring you to your knees just the same. She turned to the man, her voice unsteady, trying to find words big enough to hold what she felt. But words seemed too small. He nodded once, almost shyly, and told her to hurry home to her son. As she stepped out into the fading evening light, the city seemed different. The same cracked pavement, the same honking traffic, the same crowded sidewalks, and yet everything felt softened by the knowledge that a stranger had seen her struggle and chosen compassion. When she reached home, she found Hamza half asleep, his cheeks flushed with fever. She measured the first dose carefully, her hands steadier now. She whispered reassurance into his hair as he swallowed the medicine, his eyelids fluttering. That night, she sat beside his bed, watching his chest rise and fall. The room was small, the paint peeling in places, the single bulb casting a yellow glow. But in that fragile space, hope had returned. Outside, the city continued its restless rhythm. Inside, a mother held on to a quiet miracle. She did not know the man's name, she did not know his story, but she knew that something had shifted inside her. The world was not only harsh and unforgiving, it was also capable of unexpected mercy. And somewhere in the darkness, a stranger went home, unaware that he had just altered the course of 2 lives.
Morning arrived slowly, filtered through thin curtains that could not quite block the sunlight. Amina had not slept much. Every hour she had touched Hamza's forehead, measuring the heat with anxious fingers. By dawn, the fever had eased slightly. It was not gone, but it had retreated enough to let her breathe. Relief came cautiously, like a guest unsure of its welcome. She prepared a simple breakfast of tea and the last of the bread. As Hamza stirred, his eyes clearer than they had been in days, she felt a fragile hope bloom inside her chest. The medicine was working. The stranger's kindness was already unfolding into something tangible. Yet gratitude carried with it a quiet ache. She thought about the pharmacy again, about how close she had been to walking away empty-handed. If that man had not spoken, what would she have done? Borrowed more money she could not repay? Watched the infection worsen? The thought made her shiver. Poverty had taught her many lessons. It had taught her patience. It had taught her resilience. It had taught her how to stretch a meal, how to mend clothes, how to smile even when exhaustion clung to her bones. But it had also taught her the sharp edge of helplessness. As the days passed, Hamza improved steadily. The fever broke completely by the 3rd day. His laughter returned in small bursts at first, then in full, bright waves that filled their modest home. Each giggle felt like a victory. Amina resumed her long walks to work. The offices she cleaned gleamed under her careful hands, though no one noticed who made them shine. She did not mind invisibility. What she carried within her now felt more important than recognition. Still, she could not stop thinking about the man in the pharmacy. She replayed the moment in her mind over and over. His calm voice, his simple gesture, the way he had avoided making her feel small. One evening, as she stitched a neighbor's dress by the dim light, she made a quiet promise to herself. Someday, when she was able, she would do the same for someone else. She did not know how or when, but she knew she would. Weeks turned into months. Hamza returned to school. His energy filled the small courtyard outside their building as he played with other children. Life settled back into its familiar rhythm of work, bills, and small joys. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened again.
Amina was at the market, comparing prices of vegetables, when she noticed a familiar profile near the fruit stand. The same steady posture, the same thoughtful expression. Her heart skipped. It was him. He was speaking to an elderly vendor, carefully selecting oranges. He looked just as ordinary as before, blending seamlessly into the crowd. For a moment, Amina hesitated. What if she was mistaken? What if approaching him embarrassed him? But gratitude is a powerful force. It pushes you past fear. She stepped closer and gently called out to him. He turned, confusion flickering across his face before recognition dawned. His eyes widened slightly. She thanked him again, more coherently this time. She told him her son was healthy, back in school, laughing again. She told him that his help had meant more than he could imagine. He listened quietly, his expression softening. Then he said something that stayed with her long after the market noise swallowed their conversation. He explained that years ago, when his own daughter had been ill, he had stood in a similar line, with not enough money and too much fear. A stranger had helped him then. He had never forgotten that feeling. Since that day, he had carried a simple rule in his heart. Whenever he saw someone standing where he once stood, he would step forward. Amina felt tears gather again, but this time they were different. They were not born of shame or desperation. They were born of connection. Kindness, she realized, was not random. It was a chain, one act linking to another, stretching quietly across years and lives. The man's name, she learned, was Rahim. He worked as a bus driver. His income was modest. He was not wealthy. He was simply someone who remembered what it felt like to be desperate. As they parted ways that afternoon, something new settled inside Amina. Gratitude had transformed into responsibility. Life did not suddenly become easy. There were still months when rent felt impossible. Still nights when she stitched until her eyes burned, but she carried a new sense of purpose. One rainy evening, that purpose found its first test. She was leaving work when she noticed a young woman outside the clinic across the street, arguing softly with the receptionist. The woman held a baby wrapped in a thin blanket. Even from a distance, Amina could see the panic in her posture. The scene felt painfully familiar. Her steps slowed. She listened long enough to understand that the woman did not have enough money for the prescribed treatment. The receptionist's voice was apologetic, but firm. Amina reached into her purse. There wasn't much inside, just enough for groceries and bus fare for the week. Her heart pounded. She thought of Rahim. She thought of the small white bag of medicine. She thought of Hamza's fever breaking. Before doubt could root itself, she stepped forward. She told the receptionist to add the remaining amount to her payment. The young mother looked at her with stunned disbelief. Amina felt the same tremor she had felt months earlier at the pharmacy counter. It was not easy. The money she spent meant she would walk to work again, skip a few meals, tighten the budget even more. But as she handed over the notes, she felt something extraordinary. She felt strong. Kindness had come full circle.
Years have a quiet way of reshaping everything. Hamza grew taller. His laughter deepened. He studied hard, aware of the sacrifices woven into his childhood. He watched his mother work without complaint, her hands rough but steady. He knew pieces of the story about the medicine, about the stranger who had stepped forward. Amina had told him not to make him feel indebted, but to teach him what kind of man he should become. Rahim remained a distant but meaningful presence in their lives. They would occasionally meet at the market or bus stop. Each encounter was brief, respectful, grounded in shared understanding rather than obligation.
One afternoon, nearly 10 years after the day in the pharmacy, Amina found herself sitting in a different waiting room. This time, it was a university admissions office. Hamza had been accepted into a prestigious program. The letter had arrived like a beam of light, cutting through years of struggle. But tuition was high. Scholarships covered part of it. Hamza had worked tirelessly to earn them. Still, there was a gap, a familiar, terrifying gap. Amina felt that old anxiety creep back into her chest. The numbers on the paper blurred just as they had once at the pharmacy counter. History seemed ready to repeat itself, but something was different now. Hamza placed his hand over hers and told her not to worry. He explained that he had been tutoring younger students, saving money quietly. He had also applied for a community fund designed to help students in need. Days later, they received a call. The remaining tuition would be covered by a private donor who preferred to stay anonymous. Amina sat down heavily on the edge of her bed when she heard the news. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from fear this time, but from awe. She could not help wondering about the invisible threads connecting lives. Somewhere, someone had decided to step forward again. The night before Hamza left for university, they sat together in their small courtyard. The air was cool. The city hummed softly around them. Amina told him the full story then. Not just about the pharmacy, but about Rahim's daughter, about the chain of kindness stretching back further than either of them could see. She told him that success was not measured only by degrees or salaries, but by the moments when you choose to lift someone else. Hamza listened quietly. His eyes shone with determination. Years later, on a bright afternoon filled with applause and proud families, Hamza stood on a stage receiving an award for community leadership. He had started a small foundation during his studies, raising funds to help families afford urgent medical treatment. It had begun modestly, with a few classmates and a borrowed classroom. It had grown steadily, fueled by stories like his own. In his speech, he did not mention names, he did not recount every detail, but he spoke about a moment in a pharmacy when compassion changed the direction of a life. He spoke about how one decision can ripple outward in ways we may never witness. Amina sat in the audience, her heart overflowing. Before we reach the end of this story, I want to ask you something important. If this journey has touched your heart in any way, please write the word kindness in the comments below. Let it be a reminder that even the smallest act can travel further than we imagine. Time continued its steady march. Rahim eventually retired from driving buses. His hair turned silver. One evening, as he waited at a clinic for his routine checkup, he found himself once again standing behind someone who looked frightened and short on money. He smiled softly. The chain did not break. Somewhere across the city, Amina sat by her window, watching children play in the fading light. She no longer saw only struggle when she looked at the world. She saw possibility. She saw invisible bridges between strangers. The day she could not afford the medicine had once felt like the lowest point of her life, but it had become the foundation for something far greater than survival. It had become the beginning of a legacy of quiet generosity. And maybe that is how change truly happens, not through grand gestures or headlines, but through ordinary people choosing in ordinary moments to care. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone who once helped you or someone you wish to help, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps spread stories that keep hope alive. Because somewhere, right now, someone is standing at a counter, counting what they have and fearing it is not enough. and somewhere else, someone is about to say, "Put it on my bill."